This is a 12 by 24 inch canvas. I'm going to start with the base coat, and I'm making this as a companion piece to an earlier canvas I did with a day at the beach with jelly printed beach houses. And this is going to be the opposite, more of a winter scene, and it's a day in the city. So I'm just adding in a base coat. Then I'm going to add a layer of silver on the top and a PBO blue black on the bottom, because this will be what shows up as the grout for the bottom and the snowflakes for the top. I got the idea for this canvas when I saw Paula Phillips Journalartista's new stencil by Stencil Girl called Stacked Books, and I thought that would make a really neat building. This is just a little hand-cut bamboo stencil that I'm using like brick with some copper. And then I'm going to stencil the snowflakes in with the PBO blue black and dazzling metallics in teal. And the camera wasn't on for the first part of the canvas, but you can see here the process is similar. And I'm trying to get a quilted fabric look with this canvas. And I'm going ahead and finishing the sides. So I'm just using some ugly scrapbook paper that I'll never use for my brayer paper, and I'm using the napkin backs to lift off the first layer, which is black paint, and I'll let that dry, and then I'm doing my middle layer in teals and turquoises, and I'm using letters and number stencils and some circles. And I'm going to pull this on that same napkin. I'm trying to be careful to lift the turquoise but not push so hard to lift the black. Paula calls this a crusty bits technique because you're letting each layer dry and then picking up the final layer with a cleanup. So that's a little peek. This stencil would also make a great stained glass. On this one I put silver on the right hand side and coppers on the left. I'm just trying to get a variety of tones for the buildings. And I'm picking it up on some of that ugly scrapbook paper. And I get a pretty good print. There's a couple places where it didn't pick all the way up. So I'm going to cut this apart, the pieces that I want to use for the buildings, for the high rises. And I'm going to add a layer of dioxazine purple through a stencil just to add some detail back to the one that had the splotches that were just sort of silver and not picked up. And I just added some more detail back in. Cleaning the plate, and I'm going to do it all over again, starting with black, putting down the stacked books. This time I'm just picking it up with the back of the scrapbook paper and cleaning up, letting that dry. This is just a deep red and quinacridone gold, and using the same kind of giraffe, just some various stencils that I've cut using my Cameo, most of them, using the napkin to pick it up. I use these napkins in other mixed media canvases down the road. I'm going to let that dry. Now this time I picked it up with Titan Buff and a couple golds that I had, a raw sienna. And while I like this print a lot, it's a little bright, so I will have to grunge it up. And I ended up using it also for the windows on a lot of the buildings. So I'm going to repeat the process a third time, starting with black again. And I'm using Martha Stewart's metallic green and a sap green. Now I'm using a mink, a champagne, a Payne's gray, and I grabbed the Hooker's green, sap green instead of the Payne, so I have to go in and kind of fix this one a little bit because it's too much tone on tone with that green, and it didn't have a lot of detail. So I add some more of the Payne's gray and the quinacridone gold, and I lay some stencils down just to add some detail back on the top of that layer. If I just used the Payne's gray, it would have been fine. And I'm just kind of using some of the extra to grunge up those red ones and take the brightness down. And these are translucent mixed media paints by Deco Arts that I'm using just to get a real thin layer. Alright, so this is my fourth and final set of buildings, and I did the black. I just didn't do it on camera. And this is a red and copper that I'm putting in the second layer. And I'll use the champagne again, the mink, Payne's gray, and a little silver. Alright, so I'm starting to kind of decide which of these I'm going to use and which I'm not. And so here I've come up with my final layout, so I'm just adding it with decoupage, gel medium to the canvas. And I added a layer of washi tape along the bottom. Now I'm using some of the scraps from earlier and just cutting little windows. I know it's real difficult to see, but I just cut little pieces and made large windows and small windows and doors, and just adding a variety, just kind of mixing and matching. And then I went back with Pitt markers in brown and black, and I'm adding some details like fire escapes, the window panes, adding some shadows on the door and the grunge around the sides of the building. When you use the Pitt markers over the gel medium, you have a little bit of time that you can blend them, but once they dry, they're permanent. So I'm just adding some of the architectural details to the buildings. I didn't film everything. I thought the camera was on and it really hadn't been turned on. But I even add some of the details to the roof, like fire extinguisher chimneys and sunroofs, even a hotel sign on the back of one of the buildings, lights, trees on the street, just kind of giving it that detail. Some fences along the front, rooftop gardens. I came in and printed my quote over to the side, and now I'm just adding a little bit of the dark gray with the Pitt marker around the edges, just sort of to grunge it up on the sides and finish the canvas. And then finally I added a layer of a gloss varnish. Thanks for watching.